Oh,
This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon. Glad to see you today. How are you, Julie?
I'm well, thanks.
Great. So the first thing I just need to say is that everything we talk about here today will be confidential. The only reason I would say anything outside of this would be if you talked about harming yourself or another person, in which I would have to notify the proper authorities. Does that sound good?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So today I'm going to ask you some questions to gather information that will hopefully give us more insight into your strengths and challenges so we can make a solid plan for the future. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first, tell me your full name and date of birth.
My full name is Julie Virginia Williams, and my date of birth is April 29th, 1985.
Okay. So what is your exact age and what race are you?
I'm 38 years old and I am white Caucasian.
Okay. And how did you hear about us?
My friend had a social worker in this office years ago and referred me to y'all because I was having so many issues and did not know where to turn. It was just luck that I found you.
I understand, and I feel lucky to be able to help you. What kind of issues are you referring to?
My main reasons for coming here are my extreme depression and my trouble with alcohol. I want to stop drinking, but I do it anyways. It's just so frustrating.
I hear you. I see a lot of people that struggle with both of those issues, and I commend you for seeking help.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome. So in regard to your depression, how does it seem to affect you?
Well, I used to go spend time with friends and go hike on the weekends when I wasn't at work, but now I have no interest in that stuff. I just spend all my time watching TV or doing things that distract me from my feelings. That is a big part of the reason I drink so much too.
That must be very challenging. Does it affect you in other ways as well?
The only other things that I've noticed are that my sleep patterns have changed. I sleep way more than I used to, and I have such a hard time concentrating these days. I can't read for more than 5 seconds without starting to daydream.
I see. Well, thanks for sharing. When did these symptoms start for you and how long have they lasted?
Well, I first experienced depression when I was 17, and I was prescribed Accutane as medicine for my acne. I got severe depression as a side effect, and it nearly killed me. It went away though when I was 19 and came back again about a year and a half ago. A little bit less strongly, but I still hate it.
Yeah. Well, do you have any feelings of worthlessness or feelings of guilt or shame, loss of energy, or significant weight loss or gain?
Well, I do experience loss of energy, but nothing else. My weight is the same, and my focus is still very sharp. I don't have feelings of guilt either.
Okay. What about anxiety associated with the depression? Do you experience stress alongside your other symptoms?
Yes, but it's kind of what I call a good stress. It's the kind of stress that pushes me to get things done, like cleaning or paying bills. And once I've taken care of the issue causing the stress goes away. I do have a bit of stress about the alcohol, though.
I understand. Thanks for sharing that. So I want to ask you about your history regarding suicide, psychosis, and homicidality. You mentioned that your first experiences with depression nearly killed you. Were you talking about being suicidal? Have you ever experienced psychosis or homicidality as well? And when was this?
The only time that I ever experienced suicidal thoughts that lingered and scared me was back when I started taking Accutane. I got severely depressed and considered killing myself. This was back in 2002. I told my parents about it and they sent me to a therapist. We ultimately decided that I should get off Accutane, and the doctor also put me on a drug called Wellbutrin. After a month or two, the medicine started to work, and I never had suicidal thoughts again. And I have never experienced psychosis or homicidal thoughts.
Okay, thanks for sharing. You mentioned seeing a therapist when you were suicidal. When was that? And have you seen any other professionals to help you with your mental health?
I've only seen two therapists in my lifetime. The first one was when I was young and having difficulties with bullies at my school. This was in 96. And then I saw them for about a year and it was very helpful. The other time was with a therapist about my suicidal issues. Once I got off Accutane and got on Wellbutrin, I stopped seeing that therapist because I felt much better.
Okay. And to clarify, what age were you and what year was it that you took Wellbutrin? And also, have you taken any other medicines for your mental health issues?
It was 2002 when I took Wellbutrin and I was 17 years old.
And you said you found it helpful, correct?
Yes, it took a little while to start working, but once it did, I was good. I felt much better.
Okay, great. I'm glad it worked well for you. Now I want to ask you about your family. I'm going to list some things and I want you to tell me if there's a history for any of them in your family. Has your family had a history of behavior, mood, anxiety, trauma, substance misuse, other disorders? And this includes your siblings and parents. You can include second degree relatives as well.
Hmm. That's kind of a lot to think about, but I'll do my best. My dad was the perfect one. The only behavioral issue he had that I remember was his anger. He had a short fuse and would let it out when we were younger. But once he got a bit older, he took measures to stop being so angry. But it definitely had a lasting effect on us. My mom suffers from depression, alcoholism, and my brother has severe anxiety. He probably uses drugs too, but I can't know for sure, and he doesn't really talk about it. Besides that, my cousins are also distant. I really don't know. I think my grandfather on my mom's side may have been an alcoholic, but my mom also doesn't talk about him much, so I'm not sure.
Okay, good job. That was very informative.
Thanks.
Okay, now I want to look into your alcoholic tendencies and any history from past to present surrounding substance abuse in your life. When did you first start using alcohol, and has there been any substances besides that in your life?
So I started drinking around the age of 19. I was actually a late bloomer in this regard, as many of my friends started drinking when they were 16 or so. And the only other thing I used besides alcohol was cigarettes. I smoked for about 5 years and then quit. But I've never stopped drinking. I take breaks every now and again, but truly I've had a hard time putting it down, even though I want to.
Yeah, alcoholism can be very powerful, but I've seen many people overcome it, and you're doing great. How often and how much do you drink alcohol, and have you ever had any legal issues because of it?
Honestly, at the moment, I drink 90% of every day I'm alive. I drink wine during the week and then drink liquor and beer on the weekends. Sometimes that changes around too. I got a DUI when I was 21 years old. The court ended up expelling it as long as I went to AA meetings for 90 days and I took a driving class. I feel like I got lucky, especially since that's the only legal trouble I've ever been in.
Yeah, that's a pretty light sentence. Sometimes they will come down harder on people. Thank you for sharing that with me, though. So onto your family, what is your relationship like with your family of origin?
There were many issues with them, but overall, we do pretty well as a family. My mom and I had the most issues. I think it's because we're most alike. We would argue and get very angry at each other sometimes. We're also both alcoholics, which didn't help. And my dad and I used to get along so well, but he passed away 7 years ago. I miss him so much. And my brother is still my friend, but we have grown apart over the last few years. Ever since my dad passed away, it's just been harder for us to stay a family unit. I have kind of lost hope that that will ever happen.
I'm sorry to hear that. I do believe there's always room for growth and change, though. What about your relationship history? Have you ever been married or been in a long-term relationship? And do you have any children?
Well, relationships have not been my strong suit. I have been in love many times, but never had much luck with making relationships work. My longest relationship was 2.5 years, and honestly, a lot of it was a drunken blur. No, I do not have any children.
Okay. Well, tell me about your education and employment.
The furthest I went with school was my GED. I decided to go into sales when I was 19 and never got back into school. Since then, I've worked a few different places, mostly doing telephone sales or collections. I did ASI sales for about 8 years, where I would sell customized cups and pens to schools and fire departments, things like that. And then I worked at a collection agency for years after that. And for the past 3 years, I've been a broker for a trucking company.
Okay. Do you have any military history?
No.
All right. And what about abuse or trauma in your past?
I feel like I've been somewhat lucky in this regard. I haven't experienced much trauma that I can think of, whereas many people I know have experienced horrid things that you can't even imagine. I would say the most abusive stuff I experienced was my mother and her verbal abuse. One of the anger with and the anger with my father affected me as well. Therapist I saw when I was younger explained that we were completely enmeshed. Our emotions were tied together, so when one of us was angry, the other one would match that emotion. It would result in horrible things um, being said. But both my parents and me,
That must have been very hard.
it was.
So, how do you cope with situations that cause you stress at the moment? Do you have outlets or friends to communicate with?
I have some friends from work and a guy that I hang out with occasionally, but other than that, I'm pretty lonesome. I drink to calm my stress down if I'm being honest. I watch television, eat food too. Those things help. I wish I could just meditate or garden or something, but I can't seem to find the motivation, especially with my depression.
Yeah, that can be hard. But I'm sure if you put in some effort, you could change some of that. Uh, what is your medical history like? Do you take meds for anything besides your mental health? And also, are you allergic to anything?
The three things I can think of with my medical history would be my scoliosis, my hurt knee, and my allergy to shellfish. Other than that, I've really only dealt with typical colds and sickness. I had serious scoliosis, which is a curve in my spine, until I was about 13. And then I ended up getting surgery, which fixed it for the most part. I hurt my knee playing soccer when I was 16. I ended up tearing my meniscus and had to get surgery for that as well. Um, and lastly, my allergies to shellfish keep me pretty careful when it comes to eating seafood. I had an outbreak when I accidentally had crab when I was 23 and I ended up in the hospital and it was very scary.
Okay, Julie. Well, I have to hand it to you. You did very well today. Thank you for sharing all that with me and being so thorough. Um, a couple
Thank
things to a couple things to work on. It seems like you have major depressive disorder and alcoholism, so that's something we're going to focus on in the future.
Thanks. That sounds good to me.
Great. That's the good part about having someone process your life with. Let's meet back in a few weeks and continue to put an effort towards working out your depression and alcoholism. In the meantime, I have some AA meetings you may want to attend and a therapist number if you want to seek further counseling.
Okay, that sounds great.
All right.